Hello, and welcome to the Unriveted podcast, where we talk about technology initiatives such as artificial intelligence, digital transformation, and people. And as always, we have a sponsor, John. John, our sponsor this time is very special. It's brought to you by Artificial Intelligence in a Weekend, an executive's guide, a soon to be released book by the authors John Sukup and Martin Miller. Wow, John. So here we go. So, with all the fanfare, John, what are we going to talk about today?
I'm glad you asked, Martin. So, one of your favorite topics that we touched on briefly in the past, maybe in a different context, but we're going to talk about nefarious bad actors or hackers, if you will, and how some of them have been using LLMs and generative AI technology as part of their hacking toolbox, so to speak.
Interesting. So, the motivation behind this is going to be linked to something that happened recent in the news, as we usually get to read about, John.
Yeah, absolutely. So I know both you and I read a article specifically calling out a hacker group from North Korea um, called Emerald Sleet, which apparently goes by the name Kamuski and TA427. I'm not sure exactly what those mean, but they were observed using LLMs to bolster what they call spear phishing efforts aimed at their neighbors to the south, South Korea. And they're using things to using these LLMs to leverage think tank and NGO related personas to legitimize emails and increase the likelihood of successful spear phishing attacks. Now, I was getting ready to define spear phishing, but maybe you have a quick definition for those that have heard of fishing, but maybe not spear fishing,
Well,
and not
so
the
I
one that we
still
do in Hawaii.
okay. So I'm digressing to go back to Hawaii, John. I'm going to let you run with this one.
Perfect, perfect. So spearfishing, and this is not my definition. This was taken from actually a LLM off the internet when I searched for spearfishing. But spearfishing is a type of phishing attack that is a highly targeted phishing attack for specific individuals, organizations, or roles within a company designed to trick people into sharing sensitive information. So it's basically a phishing attack, but instead of I guess, a blanket phishing attack to individuals. They try to go after specific high ranking individuals within specific organizations.
That makes sense. It's like playing the big game hunter. So we're going for lions, tigers, and bears.
Oh, absolutely. And it seems like this is becoming a bigger and bigger issue, at least from my very cursory research into the topic, is that these groups are using these LLMs to create conversation starters. Uh, I don't think they're actually using the LLMs themselves to uh, do anything malicious, like create malicious code. Maybe they're trying to, but it sounds like, at least in this example, what we're getting is this Emerald Sleet group is using LLMs to try to get information of strategic importance to the North Korea regime.
Interesting. So I found some interesting background information on this, and in context to how we look at it. But we're in the area of the emergence of AI being used for cyber warfare, and state-run, state-sponsored groups, as the such named North Korea Emerald Sleet, using these technologies, is not a new concept that we're seeing state-sponsored attacks. But what may be more interesting these days is using AI for malicious purposes and leveraging some of the capability to outthink what they could do manually and actually become more effective. So there is a concern there, one. And then next, John, I think there's obviously security challenges, exploits that can happen using methods using an LLM to find global security attack vectors, finding ways to
Mhm.
implement them, social engineer using an LLM also. Um, and then behind all this, it's really interesting, John. I think, you know, when we live in tech, we don't always think about the implications of international relations, but yeah, international relations and how the use of AI is used in cyber espionage. Ooh, big word, espionage. Remember our episode on nefarious use of Chat GPT? Hmm, just got to bring
Oh,
that
how
one
could
out.
I forget?
Yeah,
Yeah, I know that's one of your favorite episodes.
I know. I know. Just because my mind can digress and go there, we can talk about ethical considerations, but we'll punt around that one if we can, because I think that is one that gets into areas that not all people will agree on all things here. And I'm more rather focused on what are the future trends and what we could speculate those trends in the future of cyber warfare and intelligence gathering, and how nations might prepare best for sophisticated AI driven threats. It's really fun. And I did find there was an interesting article, if I can find it. It was actually noting how Microsoft classifies these countries by like weather or storms. So sleet happens to be attached to um, North Korea specifically. And when I find the article, maybe I'll place a flyover on our video that shows an example without reading them all here. I think there was one for sandstorm, and that's a country in the Middle East. I think you can speculate there. And with that, I'd love for you to just keep going down the path that we started here.
Yeah, that's interesting. I didn't realize that the name Emerald Sleet was actually created as a reference to a specific location. So that's news to me. I should have looked looked a little
Well,
bit more into that.
well,
But
well, the sleet part of the name is the
right,
association. Yeah.
okay, okay.
So there's a hidden thing in the name. So when you start seeing these and you see something something sleet, you'll know that is North Korea. If you see something something sandstorm, well, okay, I'll say it. I think that one's Iran, but there's
Okay.
other countries also named the same way or similar.
I see. Interesting. Okay, well, you learn something every day. You did mention something, and I think that there's two areas here that we can talk about, right? I think there's, what's currently being, what LLMs or generative AI are currently being used for in these nefarious use cases by bad actors, is something that you mentioned just a little bit ago about social engineering, right? And we know that that's been kind of a big issue over the past, maybe 8, 10 years now, especially with, presidential elections where we're getting, outside influences, specifically on social media. So we see that some of these groups, and I think, the power of the LLM right now is that um, a lot of people can tell when they are interacting with a nefarious individual or individuals because maybe there's indications in the language, the English language specifically. So if you have someone who maybe is does not have a solid grasp on the English language, that English speakers might look at that and say, "Oh, this is probably coming from a someone who is impersonating someone or attempting to be someone else." But when you have LLMs, where basically the power of LLMs is they can create English language or several other languages with very few grammatical or spelling errors, that it becomes harder to discern what's a bad actor versus who is a real person. And one of these articles that we're looking at was talking about some of this content that's been generated by some of these hacking groups to try and sway public opinion. So there was a couple of things that came up. There was the train derailment that happened in Kentucky in I think November of 2023. There was something that's very close to me living in Hawaii. the Maui wildfires and saying that those were deliberately set by, shady government agencies to test military grade weather weapons, or the disposal of Japanese nuclear wastewater from the Fukushima disaster, drug use in the US, immigration policies, all of these hot button issues that these hacking groups are trying to go online and persuade people. Now, that same article that I'm referencing also said that there's very little evidence that these efforts have actually been successful in swaying opinion. But, I always think the same thing is, people wouldn't keep doing something if they didn't know that it was working at some level, right? So, I don't know how you exactly gather evidence that maybe these things are swaying public opinion until there's something that happens like a vote or an election, for instance. But it's very interesting, a bit scary. But I think I like to hear kind of what you think about the future of LLMs. Not in just being able to create content or generate text that can be used to persuade people, but how you could actually use LLMs to maybe create malicious code or viruses, so to speak, that can infect, um, corporate servers, or even just everyday people like you and me.
Sure. So I could digress in a couple areas. One, I'm not super concerned about someone's intentional use of an LLM to inject code into something else unless they tie it to a workflow to do that, which is kind of the interesting part of using an LLM to help you build a complex set of tasks and maybe be able to spin up uh, processes remotely. Now we're talking automation and then hyper automation. As you're quite aware, that could be extremely dangerous as a tool for persuading people that what the truth is or something about something that is a mistruth, and sharing information in a large volume across multiple vectors and coming from different angles. I could see automating and creating that kind of campaign, almost like think of it like a CRM campaign on steroids. Imagine that. And we're not selling you a pair of blue jeans, John. We're talking we're talking about who's in your wallet and what's left in your bank.
Interestingly enough, Martin, I got rid of all my blue jeans recently, so I don't wear blue jeans anymore.
I
Although I see you're wearing a very stunning jean jacket, it looks like, so I
it's
do like
it's
that.
it's actually Japanese denim, and it's a shirt, and it's actually made in United States of America, American made from the finest Japanese denim. There we go. I said that.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well, anyway, you'll have to send me where you got that from so I can pick one up myself. But yeah, one thing, um, a couple of things based on what you said there about the ability to hyper automate. Obviously, when we think about AI, that we think about hyper automation, obviously for typically good purposes to make our jobs easier, make our lives more simplistic, and have less that we have to worry about as human beings. But I also think about it, when you think of like a computer virus, right? A computer virus is just kind of like a human virus, like COVID, right? So when COVID came out, just like any other virus, the flu virus or the cold virus, they mutate over time, right? They find different ways to adapt so that they are still able to infect people. And I think, and you correct me if I'm wrong, because you probably have a better understanding of this, but thinking about, if someone creates a computer virus in the traditional sense, eventually that computer virus is, the antivirus companies or what have you are going to figure out, how to stop it. And then it's back to the drawing board. But I almost wonder if, this type of technology could hyper automate the mutation, so to speak, of a computer virus so that as soon as someone is able to fix it or capture an existing virus, the AI backend is able to mutate it in a way that it becomes undetectable again and continue on with its, mission, whatever that may be. What do you think about that?
So you bring up a very good point. A lot of and the word traditional is probably not appropriate, but I would say the modern viruses uh, are very signature oriented, very copycat oriented. They have a lot of the same characteristics. They do a lot of the same things. They make something happen that shouldn't happen. They help um, carry data from one spot to another, and you can look for that kind of anomalous pattern with security software today. But it's all often it's based off of analysis and reports, and it's already impacted somebody. And so, with higher automation intelligence on how you can deliver those, if you can open the pinhole to delivery, then you can deliver these new types of strains of coronavirus to the computer, so to speak. So instead of, you know, COVID-19, maybe it's COVID 2024, John.
Ooh, that is quite scary.
Yeah.
But I'm sure it won't be far off that we'll have another situation like that. Hopefully, it goes a little bit better than than it did around the world last time. But it seems very likely that that we'll have some adaptation that will cause another global situation like that. One other thing I wanted to ask you about, Martin, that I don't want to go too far away from the LLM uh, portion of what we're talking about in terms of nefarious actors and hacking groups using them for their purposes. But one thing I think we talked about, and that's been around for a while, but I haven't really seen it develop into a potentially threatening technology of the type that we're talking about, but deepfakes. So deepfakes have gotten much more elaborate, much more sophisticated, where you can, not only clone someone's face and put it on your face or your head or my head, and it looks like this podcast is between Elon Musk and you know Christopher Walken. I'll let you guess which one. You could be Christopher Walken in this, but we also
Thanks.
have voice cloning technology. Yeah, he's a respected actor, so you should be happy.
Well, I'm so honored. So I've seen recent demonstrations of this actually in action of famous people and how they did it. And it wasn't just the likeness; it was actually the mannerisms, some of the facial expressions, um, and reaction to facial expressions, on top of training this deep fake on literature, or let's say books, writing, emails, articles that the person that they're mimicking has written. So it's trained on the way that person may write. So out publicly, it would sound very similar. Think about that. And that is a reality. That's something that's real today.
Right, right. And I think, for a lot of us, although maybe not, for you and I, obviously, if we hear or see something or someone tells us something, my first inclination is let's go out on the internet and triple, quadruple check that information and make sure that's true. Some people don't take the time to do that. And then there's obviously some locations around the world where people do not have access to the internet or to the capabilities of finding that. They might have one television station that's run by the government, and whatever is shown on that station is the be all end all for those individuals' knowledge of what's going on in their world or in the outside world. So if you have someone who were to create one of these videos in the likeness of a world leader with the same voice and the same mannerisms and even using maybe the same words, which is this, amalgamation, I guess, of all these different generative AI technologies coming together for one, you know, nefarious purpose,
Yeah.
It begs the question, like, what kind of impact could that have on some of these places? Or, potentially, it could have, if it put in the right hands, it might have the ability to improve a situation. But you never know. As soon as people find out that they've been lied to, um, or if they ever do, then
Right.
then you have a whole other thing to deal with.
Yeah. So, you know, um, I like to think of AI for good, and we let the cat out of the bag, so to speak, with AI now and large language models specifically, which it seems to have ratcheted up the rate of change that we're seeing publicly. So the influence for misinformation, campaigns, psychological operations, this all could be elevated to adversarial mode for bad actors, and and we're not even saying out of the country. This could be within our own country, political adversaries using techniques and applying those and creating their Facebook campaigns and their Instagrams and deep faked videos that show their adversary, perhaps depicting actions and words that really aren't theirs. And that would be an extreme realistic case to create. We've already seen examples of it. Uh, it's a real, how do you put the stamp of approval of where the truth is? How do you know you're hearing the right, source of truth? And so we're going to get into a lot of dicey scenarios. And, I think the future for security software for detecting origins and intent and perhaps cutting off these vectors is going to be quite interesting. And I think there'll be significant potential investment opportunity for upstarts or large companies to get involved in investing in their tooling. And so I think AI for good will come to the rescue, but evil always seems to lead us there.
Yeah. As soon as a new technology comes out, it seems you're right. The evil actors are the ones that take advantage of it first, and then the good ones have to come in and clean up shop, so to speak.
We've covered a good amount of ground here for our audience to contemplate, the significance in their life and such. You think there's any parting thoughts you'd like to share from our new learnings?
Well, I would say always be sure to uh, second guess what you think the truth is. Never take anything at face value anymore today because you never know if someone has cruel intentions in mind for showing you or telling you what they may have. So it's unfortunate. There's no real single source of truth, or what even is truth, I guess.
Tough topic on its own. Well, as usual, John, this has been a good chat about artificial intelligence and the impact into adversarial use. So, with that, I think this is a good time to do a wrap. So, I want to say thanks all for listening. Remember to put a big old thumb up when you watch and listen on your favorite network, and be on the lookout for our soon to be published released book, AI in a Weekend, an executive's guide. Looking forward to hearing from you. Thanks all.
Thanks, everyone.